Callum Hayes didn't believe in ghosts until the night he heard a baby crying in his abandoned mansion. No electricity. No staff. Just him, and the sound that wouldn't stop. He followed it through dust-choked halls and rotting floorboards. What he found in the attic wasn't a ghost. It was a girl. And she wasn't alone. When billionaire real estate mogul Damian Cross purchased the long-abandoned Hawthorne mansion, it was meant to be a quiet investment: bulldoze, rebuild, sell. But the ivy-covered estate held more than dust and decay. The first night he visited, planning only a quick inspection before handing the property over to his demolition team, he heard something. A soft cry. Not the wind or old pipes, but a baby. Following the sound through crumbling halls and forgotten rooms, he found her, no more than 19, wrapped in a tattered blanket, holding a newborn in her arms. Her eyes met his, wide with fear and determination. "Please," she whispered. "Don't take him." She called herself Ilara. She'd been living in the mansion's secret basement for weeks, maybe longer, hidden beneath trapdoors and false walls. Her story unraveled like a ghost's confession. She had fled a powerful man who wanted her silence and her child. That man, Damian soon discovered, was his own estranged brother. Haunted by the revelation, Damian's world crumbled. The empire he'd built, the family he thought he knew, it was all a lie. And in the middle of it all was this girl and her baby, blood of his blood, hiding in the shadows of a home he now truly owned. The mansion's secret wasn't a scandal or treasure. It was truth, raw and buried. In saving her, Damian would have to confront the past he ignored, protect the innocent he never knew existed, and choose between wealth built on betrayal or redemption rooted in love. Because some homes don't just hold memories. They hold destinies. Damian Vale had everything: money, power, and a name that opened every door. But none of it prepared him for what he'd find inside the ruins of Blackridge Estate. He bought the abandoned mansion on a whim, charmed by rumors of its haunted past and hidden vaults. But instead of buried gold, he found life, fragile, trembling life. In the crumbling nursery at the top of the stairs, a girl no older than 20 stood between him and a rusted crib, her arms wrapped around an infant. Her eyes were defiant, but rimmed with exhaustion. "He has no one else," she said quietly. "Please, don't make us leave." Her name was Lila, and the child was hers. Or so he thought. As days unfolded and trust slowly bloomed, she told him the truth: the baby wasn't hers. He was his. A stunned silence fell over him. She'd been a caregiver at a hidden facility run by his late father, one where unwanted children from secret affairs were kept far from the public eye. Damian's father, it seemed, had a long trail of shadows, and one of them was this child, his own son, abandoned by blood, but not by fate. As Damian held the child for the first time, the walls around his heart cracked. This wasn't just a boy. This was the heir of everything forgotten. Not just a family legacy, but a chance to make things right. He couldn't undo the past, but he could rewrite the future. And it would start not with boardrooms or billion-dollar deals, but with a cradle, a promise, and a woman brave enough to protect what the world had thrown away. Because sometimes, the greatest inheritances are the ones we never knew we lost. The Hawthorne estate had been abandoned for nearly 2 decades, left to rot beneath layers of ivy and rumor. Billionaire tech tycoon Julian Ward bought it on impulse, drawn by whispers of its tragic past and the eerie quiet it seemed to keep. But from the moment he stepped inside, silence was the last thing he found. Footsteps in empty corridors. A lullaby hummed when no one else was there. Whispers that seemed to speak his name. Julian dismissed it as old pipes and tired nerves until he pried open a sealed door behind the library wall and found her. A young woman, frail but fierce, clutching a baby to her chest. Her clothes were ragged, her eyes wide, as if she hadn't seen daylight in years. "Don't tell them we're here," she begged, voice cracking like a ghost's cry. Her name was Mara. She had been hidden there, forgotten by the world, abandoned by someone who had promised her protection. The baby was hers. And someone powerful, had wanted them both to disappear. Julian didn't believe in fate. He believed in algorithms, logic, and data. But Mara's presence, the child's unrelenting gaze, and the buried journals he found inside the walls told a different story. This mansion wasn't haunted by ghosts. It was haunted by secrets. And in those secrets, Julian uncovered a connection to his own past, one that linked him to the estate, to Mara, and to a truth his family had buried long ago. Now, he faced a choice: walk away and keep the silence intact, or expose the past and protect the future. Because the real echoes behind the walls weren't sounds. They were cries for justice and redemption. Rain lashed against the cracked windows of the old Evermore mansion as billionaire investor Elias Rourke stepped inside. What was meant to be a quiet inspection of a newly acquired, long-forgotten estate turned into something else entirely, a moment that would shatter the life he knew. Dust swirled through beams of his flashlight as he moved deeper into the house, but then he heard it, a soft whimper, almost like a kitten. No. A baby. Guided by instinct, he followed the sound to a hidden stairwell behind a bookcase. It led to a cellar cloaked in shadows. There, nestled between crates and crumbling stone, was a cradle. A woman sat beside it, her thin frame wrapped in a blanket, eyes burning with a mix of terror and fierce protectiveness. "Please," she whispered. "Don't take him. He's all I have." Her name was Rowan. She had been living beneath the mansion for months, hiding from a past that nearly consumed her. The baby, she claimed, was the result of a twisted betrayal. One that involved a man Elias knew all too well, his late father. The child, Elias realized with growing dread, was his half-brother. The mansion had been more than just another property. It was a burial ground for sins, a vault for secrets. And in its darkest corner lay a cradle, holding not just a child, but the last fragile thread of innocence born from generations of cruelty. Elias had spent his life building walls, burying pain beneath power. But now, faced with a woman who had risked everything and a baby born into shadow, he saw the truth. This wasn't about legacy. It was about redemption. Because sometimes, the smallest cries are what finally wake the sleeping heart. When Sterling Davenport inherited the Ashcroft estate, he thought it was nothing more than a legal formality. The crumbling mansion, untouched for 30 years, was his late grandfather's final bequest, an unwanted relic of a family legacy built on silence and secrets. But the silence didn't last. On his first visit, Sterling noticed signs of life: a flickering light, footprints in the dust, and the unmistakable sound of a baby's cry echoing through the grand hall. He followed the sound with cautious disbelief, expecting raccoons or squatters. Instead, he found her. A young woman, gaunt but defiant, stood in what had once been a music room, her arms wrapped around a tiny, wailing infant. She didn't scream, didn't beg, she only stared, as if she'd been waiting. "I knew someone would come," she said quietly. "I just didn't expect it to be you." Her name was Adeline, and the baby she held was Sterling's niece, a child no one knew existed. His estranged brother, presumed dead after vanishing years ago, had left behind more than a mystery. He had left a life. And Adeline, the girl he loved, had been hiding ever since, protected only by the forgotten walls of a house that should have destroyed her. Sterling's world tilted. The empire he'd inherited was more than money and name. It was built on abandonment, on lies, on silence. And now, in the cradle of that silence, was a child who bore the Davenports' blood and their chance for change. He could sell the house, erase the past, and walk away. Or he could stay, listen, and finally give voice to everything that had been buried. Because some inheritances come in gold, and others in cries that no one dared to hear. Billionaire philanthropist Callum Hayes bought the derelict Renmore estate as a personal retreat, a place to escape the noise of the world he'd conquered. Nestled on the edge of a forgotten forest, the mansion had a tragic past: rumors of disappearances, family secrets, and a final, sudden abandonment. Callum expected echoes and dust. He didn't expect her. In the attic, beneath a shattered skylight and tangled vines, he found a girl. No older than 20, with hollow cheeks and guarded eyes. She stood frozen, holding a bundle wrapped in threadbare cloth. "Please," she said, her voice a rasp of fear and resolve. "We'll be gone by morning." But Callum didn't move. He looked at her, then the baby in her arms, peaceful, innocent, impossibly small. Something tightened in his chest, something no boardroom or battle for wealth had ever touched. Her name was Eve. She had been hiding in Renmore for nearly a year, surviving off scraps, forgotten by everyone except the child. He was hers, but not by blood. A child born of pain, abandoned by others. She had found him here, crying and cold, and she stayed because he had no one else. She was never meant to be seen. But she wasn't alone. As Callum listened to her story, a past he never knew began to surface about his own family's connection to Renmore, about a mother lost and a brother buried in shame. Eve and the child weren't intruders. They were the last thread tying him to the truth. And in that attic, amid ruins and silence, Callum saw his future not in wealth, but in purpose. Because she wasn't alone anymore. And neither was he.